Helena was 64 years old when she decided she had given up enough. Years of failed attempts, encounters that led nowhere, conversations that died before they even began. She had grown accustomed to loneliness, but had never made peace with it. That Saturday morning, she decided to go to the municipal market, a place she had frequented since she was young. The aroma of fresh fruit and spices always brought her a sense of life, of possibilities. It was there, among the flower stalls, that her eyes met his. Gabriel was 23 years old and worked helping his father in the family flower shop. He was arranging vases of violets when he felt her gaze. He turned and smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. Helena felt something she hadn't experienced in decades, an electric current that ran through her entire body. She approached, feigning interest in the flowers, but in truth she was interested in that warm and welcoming gaze. They began to talk about plants, about garden care, and the conversation flowed with surprising naturalness. Gabriel spoke passionately about his work, about his dreams of one day owning his own flower shop. Helena listened, fascinated, not only by his words, but by the intensity with which he lived each moment. At the end of the conversation, she bought a bouquet of daisies and said goodbye, but she carried with her much more than flowers. In the following days, Helena couldn't get Gabriel out of her head. She returned to the market the following Saturday, and he was there again. This time, the conversation was longer, more personal. He told her about the loss of his mother 2 years earlier, about how he had taken on responsibilities too early. She shared about her marriage, which had ended 15 years ago, about her children who were now adults and had their own lives. There was an inexplicable connection between them, something that transcended the age difference. Weeks passed, and those Saturday meetings became the most anticipated moment of Helena's week. Gabriel also waited for her, preparing special flowers, setting aside the most beautiful ones. One day, he invited her for coffee after work. Helena hesitated for a moment, aware of all the judgments they might face, but something in her heart compelled her to accept. Sitting in that small corner cafe, they talked for hours. They laughed together, shared comfortable silences, and it was there that Gabriel mustered the courage to hold her hand on the table. The touch was electric, confirming what they both already knew but were afraid to admit. There was love there, an unlikely love, misunderstood by many, but genuine and profound. Helena knew the world wouldn't be kind to them. Her children would be shocked. Her friends would make malicious comments. People on the street would cast disapproving glances. But when she looked into Gabriel's eyes, none of that seemed to matter. He made her feel alive again, not because he rejuvenated her, but because he saw her exactly as she was and loved her for it. Gabriel would also face his own challenges. His friends wouldn't understand. His father would be worried. People would question his intentions. But he knew what he felt. In Helena, he had found a partner, someone who understood him deeply, who supported his dreams, who challenged him to be better. The age difference was obvious to the world, but invisible to their hearts. They began to meet more frequently. Walks in the park, dinners in small restaurants where no one knew them, afternoons at the movies. Every moment together was precious because they knew they were building something fragile, something that many would try to destroy. The first time they were seen holding hands in the street, they felt heavy stares upon them. An elderly lady shook her head in disapproval. A group of young people laughed, pointing. Helena felt shame rise up her face, but Gabriel squeezed her hand tighter, as if to say it didn't matter. When Helena finally told her children, the reaction was exactly what she expected. Her daughter cried, saying that her mother was being ridiculed. Her son was furious, accusing Gabriel of being self-serving, of being after money or some future inheritance. The words hurt more than Helena imagined they could. Gabriel also faced resistance from his family. His father tried to be understanding but was clearly worried. His friends made cruel jokes. Some distanced themselves. There were times when the weight of the world seemed too much to bear. There were nights when Helena cried alone at home, questioning whether she was being selfish, whether she was ruining the life of a young man who had his whole future ahead of him. She called Gabriel, proposing that they break up, that each go their own way. He appeared at her door half an hour later, with red eyes, and said he wasn't interested in a future that didn't include her. They told each other that their love didn't need anyone's approval. They decided they would live their story in a way that made sense to them, not to the world. They began to build a life together, within their possibilities. They didn't live together yet, but they spent most of their time in each other's company. She helped him with plans for the flower shop. He encouraged her to return to painting, a hobby she had abandoned years ago. Together they discovered that love has no age, doesn't follow social rules, and doesn't ask for permission. Love simply happens, and when it's true, it withstands all judgment. Helena learned that it was never too late to start over, to allow herself to feel, to risk her heart once more. Gabriel learned that true connections aren't based on numbers or social expectations, but on mutual understanding and respect. Their path wouldn't be easy. There would always be those who didn't understand, who criticized, who tried to separate them. But they had found something rare and precious, and they were willing to protect it. Because after many attempts, Helena had finally found not just love, but a soulmate. And Gabriel had found in Helena not just a partner, but someone who truly saw him. Their forbidden love was forbidden only in the eyes of those who couldn't see beyond conventions. For them, it was simply love. Months passed, and the relationship between Helena and Gabriel deepened even further. They created their own rituals, small moments that belonged only to the two of them. Every Thursday night, Gabriel cooked for Helena in her small apartment. He wasn't a great chef, but he tried hard to learn new recipes, and she loved watching him focused in the kitchen, his tongue between his teeth as he followed the instructions. On Sunday mornings, they walked together along the city's waterfront, when it was still empty and they could simply be themselves without prying eyes. It was during one of these walks that Helena realized how much Gabriel had matured in recent months. He spoke about his plans with more confidence, about how he was saving every penny to finally open his own flower shop. She supported him not only with words, but by sharing her decades of experience as an administrator. Together, they made spreadsheets, studied the market, and visited potential commercial locations. Helena's daughter, Marina, was the first to begin to give in. One day, she showed up unannounced at her mother's house and found Gabriel there, helping to fix a dripping faucet. He was kind, offered coffee, and discreetly withdrew to give mother and daughter space to talk. Marina looked at her mother and saw something she hadn't seen in years. A sparkle in her eyes, a lightness in her gestures. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider that perhaps, just perhaps, it was real. The conversation was difficult, full of uncomfortable pauses and harsh truths. Marina admitted she was afraid her mother would get hurt, that Gabriel would eventually leave her for someone younger. Helena held her daughter's hands and said she also had those fears, that she woke up some nights with a heavy heart thinking about it, but that she preferred to fully live that love for as long as it lasted, than to live with security, but without life. Marina cried, and Helena cried with her, and when Gabriel returned to the room, he found the two embracing. He understood that something had changed, that a bridge was being built. Gabriel's father took longer to accept it. A conservative man with rigid principles, he saw that relationship as an aberration. He avoided talking about the subject, changing the subject whenever Gabriel mentioned Helena. The situation reached its breaking point one Sunday when Gabriel invited Helena to lunch at his father's house. The tension at the table was palpable, each bite a conscious effort to maintain politeness. It was when Gabriel's father, Suantonio, made a scathing comment about how Gabriel was wasting his youth that Helena decided to speak. In a calm but firm voice, she said she understood his concerns, that she was also a mother and knew what it was like to want to protect her children. But she asked him to look at Gabriel, really look, and see that he was happy, that he was growing, that he was becoming a better man. She said she wasn't there to steal anyone's youth, but to share a genuine connection they had found. Suantonio remained silent for long minutes. Then he got up from the table and went out to the yard. Gabriel was about to follow him, but Helena held him back, saying it was better to give it time. They finished lunch in silence, but as they were leaving, Suantonio appeared with a vase of begonias he had grown. He handed it to Helena without saying anything, but there was something in his eyes that seemed like the beginning of acceptance. At the flower shop, things were also changing. Regular customers began to notice Helena, who frequently visited Gabriel during business hours. Some made malicious comments. Others simply avoided looking directly at them. But there were also those who saw something beautiful there, like Donna Carmem, a lady who bought flowers every week. One day she stopped and told Helena that she envied her, not for Gabriel's youth, but for the courage to live a true love regardless of what others thought. These small victories sustained Helena on difficult days, because there were difficult days, many of them. Days when people were cruelly direct in their opinions. One day at the supermarket, a former co-worker of Helena's made a point of approaching her and saying loudly enough for others to hear that it was a shame for a woman her age to lower herself in that way. Gabriel was beside her and saw the tears Helena was trying to hold back. He put his arm around her and guided her out of the store, the forgotten purchases in the cart. In the car, she broke down. She said that maybe everyone was right, that she was being ridiculous, that she was ruining the reputation she had built her whole life. Gabriel held her face in his hands and said that the only ridiculous thing was living according to the expectations of people who didn't truly care about her. He said he loved her, that every day by her side was a gift, and that if she wanted to give up on her own, he would respect that, but not because of what others thought. Helena looked at that young face, full of determination and love, and realized that he was more mature in matters of the heart than many men she had known throughout her life. They decided they needed to create a space of their own, a place where they could be completely free. Gabriel found a small property to rent on the outskirts of the city. Nothing luxurious, just a simple house with a large plot of land. They used their savings to make that place special. On weekends, they worked together planting flowers and vegetables, building flower beds. That place became their refuge, the only place where they could simply exist without judgment. It was there, on a starry summer night, that Gabriel proposed to Helena. There was no ring, no elaborate ceremony. He simply held her hands and said he wanted to spend the rest of his life building that garden with her, literally and metaphorically. Helena was paralyzed. Marriage. The word carried so much weight, so much responsibility. It would mean making it official, facing not only stares but paperwork, certificates, a public declaration of their love. She thought about her children, how they would react. She thought about Gabriel's family, his friends, the whole city. But then she looked around at the garden they had created together and realized they were already married in every way that mattered. She said yes. The wedding preparations were challenging. They wanted something intimate, just for the people who truly supported them. The guest list was shorter than Helena would have liked, but she was learning that quality mattered more than quantity. Marina agreed to be a bridesmaid, a gesture that meant the world to Helena. Her son Raphael was still hesitant, but said he would attend even if he didn't approve. Gabriel's father, surprisingly, offered his backyard for the ceremony. It was a small gesture, but immense in meaning. Donna Carmem, the loyal customer of the florist, insisted on making the cake. Other customers who had approached them offered help in various ways. Helena realized she was building a new family, not by blood, but by choice. The wedding day dawned sunny. Helena woke up nervous, not for the traditional reasons, but because she knew that day would mark a definitive line. There would be no going back, no more hiding, no more excuses. She would officially be the wife of a man 41 years younger. As she got ready, she looked in the mirror and saw not an old woman making a fool of herself, as some said, but a woman who had found the courage to live authentically. The wrinkles on her face told stories of a life lived, and now there was room for more chapters. The ceremony was simple and moving. When Gabriel saw her entering the yard, his eyes filled with tears. She wore a light blue dress, elegant yet understated, and carried a bouquet of the same daisies she had bought the day they met. They wrote their own vows. Gabriel spoke about how Helena had taught him that true love was about partnership, about growing together, about supporting each other's dreams. Helena spoke about how he had shown her that it was never too late to start over, to take risks, to live life to the fullest. There wasn't a dry eye among those present. Even Raphael, who had arrived with a closed expression, discreetly wiped away a tear. When the justice of the peace declared them husband and wife, there was heartfelt applause. They kissed, and in that kiss there was promise, hope, and challenge. Married life brought a new reality to Helena and Gabriel. They decided to live together in Helena's apartment, which was larger and better located. Gabriel brought his few belongings, his plants, his books, and suddenly, that space, which for years had been only hers, became theirs. At first, it was an awkward dance of two people needing to learn each other's rhythms. Gabriel would leave wet towels on the floor. Helena would wake up much earlier than he would have liked. But there was a sweetness in these small irritations, because they were proof that they were sharing a real life, not a romantic fantasy. The first few months were about adjusting. Gabriel continued working at his father's flower shop while saving for his own business. Helena, who had retired 2 years earlier, discovered a new energy. She returned to painting seriously, transforming the guest room into a studio. Gabriel loved watching her work, the concentration on her face, the precise brush strokes. She mainly painted landscapes but began to include human figures, couples at different stages of life, and he knew that those works were about them, about what they represented. Raphael finally decided to get to know Gabriel better. They arranged a dinner, just the two of them, without Helena present. It was a tense night, full of direct questions and honest answers. Raphael asked about Gabriel's intentions, about plans for children, about what would happen when Helena got older and needed care. Gabriel didn't shy away from any question. He said he loved his mother for who she was, not for what she had, that they didn't plan to have children because Helena had already raised hers, and he respected that, and that when the day came that she needed care, he would be there, just as she was there now to support him. Raphael left that dinner still not completely convinced, but with less resistance. He told his mother afterward that perhaps Gabriel really did love her, but that he would still need to prove it with time. Helena accepted this truth. She knew that trust was built slowly. The big turning point for Gabriel happened 7 months after the wedding. With his savings and a small loan that Helena insisted on taking out as an investment, he finally opened his flower shop. It wasn't big, just a small shop in a residential neighborhood, but it was his. Helena was by his side on opening day, helping to arrange the vases, checking prices, and welcoming the first customers. The joy on Gabriel's face was indescribable. For the first time in his life, he was realizing his own dream, and Helena felt immense pride in having been a part of it. The flower shop started slowly, but gradually gained customers. Gabriel had a way with plants and, more importantly, a way with people. He was patient explaining care instructions, generous with advice, and attentive to each customer. Helena frequently stopped by, not to work but to keep him company. She would sit in a chair in the corner and paint, or simply watch her husband work. Customers began to learn their story, and the reactions varied. Some were openly disapproving and didn't return. Others were curious but respectful, and there were those who became defenders of the couple, as if they had a personal investment in their happiness. Donna Amelia, a retired teacher, used to tell anyone who would listen that Helena and Gabriel were proof that love had no expiration date. Not everything was rosy, though, and the irony didn't escape their notice. There were moments of crisis. One afternoon, Gabriel received a visit from Amanda, an ex-girlfriend from when he was 19. She had heard about the flower shop and decided to stop by. She was beautiful, young, and full of life. She openly flirted with Gabriel, said she missed him, and that perhaps they could meet again to talk about old times. Gabriel was polite but firm, saying he was married and happy. She looked around, saw a photo of him and Helena on the counter, and made a venomous comment about how he had lowered his standards. Gabriel asked her to leave. When Helena found out, she tried to pretend it didn't affect her, but Gabriel saw through the facade. That night, they talked at length about insecurities. Helena admitted that there were days when she looked in the mirror and wondered how long it would take for Gabriel to wake up and realize he could have someone younger, prettier, more suitable. Gabriel held her hands and said something she would never forget. He said that beauty fades, youth fades, but connection, respect, and true love were rare and precious. He said he had dated young and beautiful girls before, but had never felt what he felt with her, this feeling of being at home, of being completely understood. His words didn't completely cure Helena's insecurities, but they made them more bearable. Gabriel also had his insecurities. There were times when he felt inadequate, too young, too inexperienced. When Helena's friends came to visit, people with established careers, assets, decades-long marriages, he felt small. Helena noticed when this happened. She saw him becoming quieter, less involved. After the visitors left, she reminded him that everyone had their own path, that he was building something meaningful, and that she wasn't interested in competing with the past, but in building a future. Their first wedding anniversary was celebrated on the property that now truly belonged to them. With the profits from the flower shop and the sale of some of Helena's paintings, they managed to buy the place. They spent the day working the land, planting new seedlings, and at night they made a bonfire. Sitting side by side, watching the flames dance, they took stock of the year. It had been difficult, full of challenges and trials, but it had also been the most fulfilling year of their lives. Gabriel commented that in 12 months he had grown more as a person than in all his previous 20-odd years. Helena said she had rediscovered parts of herself that she thought were lost forever. Gabriel's mother, who had passed away before they met, would have had her birthday that week. He spoke about her in depth for the first time, about how she always said that true love was the kind that made you want to be better. He said he now understood what she meant, because Helena made him want to be better every day. Helena cried, moved not only by the words, but by realizing that she had been accepted into his story in such a profound way. The second year of marriage brought stability. The flower shop was thriving. Helena's paintings began to be sold in a local gallery, and family relationships were healthier. Marina and Gabriel developed a genuine friendship. She frequently came to the flower shop to buy plants and chat. Raphael still kept a certain distance, but he was polite and present on important dates. So Antonio began to have dinner with them once a week, and although he was a man of few words, Helena felt she had earned his respect. It was during this period of relative calm that Helena began to feel pain in her joints. At first she ignored it, attributing it to her age and the days of work on the farm. But when the pain intensified and was accompanied by extreme fatigue, Gabriel insisted that she see a doctor. The diagnosis was rheumatoid arthritis, an autoimmune disease that would require ongoing treatment and lifestyle changes. For the first time since they met, Helena saw real fear in Gabriel's eyes, not fear of losing her immediately, but awareness of her fragility, of the age difference in a concrete way. She also felt fear, but of something different. Fear of becoming a burden, of him being stuck caring for a sick woman when he should be living his youth. She tried to push him away, suggesting that perhaps they should rethink their relationship, that he still had time to find someone more suitable. Gabriel was furious, not with her, but with the situation. He said that marriage vows included health and sickness, and that he hadn't said those words lightly. That caring for her wouldn't be a sacrifice but a privilege, just as she cared for him emotionally every day. He began accompanying her to all medical appointments, learned about the disease, and adjusted their routine to accommodate her needs. There were difficult days, when the pain was intense and Helena became frustrated with her body's limitations. Gabriel learned to recognize those days and simply be present, without trying to fix things, just supporting her. She learned to accept help, something that had always been difficult for her. The illness brought a different kind of intimacy to their relationship. Gabriel learned to prepare anti-inflammatory teas, to massage Helena's hands when her joints ached too much, to recognize the signs of a bad day even before she verbalized them. She learned to let him take care of her without feeling like she was losing her independence. They discovered that love was also about this, being present in difficult moments without resentment, with genuine patience. The medication helped control the symptoms, and Helena learned to manage the condition. Some days were better than others, but she refused to let arthritis define her life. She continued painting, adapting her techniques when her hands didn't cooperate, using larger brushes, exploring other styles. Gabriel installed a special easel in the studio that allowed her to work comfortably seated. The paintings from this phase had a different quality, more emotional, more raw. A gallery in a larger city became interested in her work and organized a solo exhibition. It was a small but significant event. On opening day, Helena was nervous, not only because of the exhibition itself, but because it would be one of the first times she and Gabriel appeared together publicly at a formal event where many people didn't know them. She wore an elegant dress, he a suit that Marina had helped choose. When they entered the gallery hand in hand, some glances turned to them, that quick assessment they knew so well. But then people began to focus on the paintings, and Helena was drawn into conversations about her art, about techniques, about inspiration. Gabriel circulated around the room, listening to people comment on his wife's work, and the pride in his chest was almost tangible. An art journalist approached and asked for an interview. During the conversation, she inevitably asked about inspirations, and Helena mentioned Gabriel, mentioned how love had been reborn in her life and transformed her art. The journalist, young and perceptive, noticed the age difference and asked directly how that influenced her work. Helena took a deep breath and answered honestly. She said that she painted about love in all its forms, about how true connections transcend social conventions, about the courage to live authentically. The interview was published 2 weeks later, and for the first time her story was available to a wider audience. The reactions were predictable. Some online comments were cruel, calling her ridiculous, accusing Gabriel of opportunism. But there was also a wave of support, especially from older women who identified with the story, who sent messages saying that Helena had given them the courage to pursue their own happiness. One letter in particular touched Helena deeply. It was from a 72-year-old woman who had been widowed and felt her love life was over. After reading the interview, she decided to reconnect with socializing, to allow herself the possibility of connection. Helena realized that their story, however personal, resonated beyond themselves. Perhaps there was purpose in all the exposure and judgment they had faced. Gabriel handled the attention differently. He was more reserved, less comfortable in the spotlight. Some of his childhood friends began to reappear, now that he had a thriving business and a story that had made local headlines. He was skeptical of their motives, but Helena encouraged him to give them chances, not to let cynicism take over. One of these friends, Lucas, ended up becoming close again. He himself was in an unconventional relationship, dating someone from another culture whose family disapproved. He found in Gabriel someone who understood the weight of others' judgment. The four of them started going out together, and for the first time Gabriel had a social circle where he felt completely accepted. Their third wedding anniversary brought deeper reflections. Helena was now 67, Gabriel 26. He was in the prime of his youth, building a business full of energy and plans. She was managing a chronic illness, dealing with the realities of aging. One night, after a severe pain crisis, Helena again questioned whether she was being fair to him. She said he should be going out with friends, traveling, having adventures, not at home taking care of a sick woman. Gabriel listened patiently, as he always did, and then asked if she remembered the day they met. Helena nodded. He said that on that day, he was stuck, working in a business that wasn't his, without direction, without any real passion for anything, that she had appeared and literally changed the trajectory of his life, that every good thing that had happened in the last 3 years was a direct or indirect result of her being in his life. That yes, sometimes it was challenging, but challenges were part of any real relationship, and he would much rather face challenges alongside her than have an easy life without her. Helena cried, as she always cried when he spoke like that, with a sincerity that cut through all her defenses. Raphael showed up unannounced on a Sunday morning. It wasn't common for him to make spontaneous visits. He sat in the living room and remained silent for a long moment before speaking. He said that he had spent the last 3 years waiting for his mother's relationship to end, waiting for Gabriel to show his true colors, waiting to be right about his suspicions. But time had proven him wrong. She said she saw how Gabriel cared for his mother, how he supported her, how he loved her consistently and genuinely. She apologized for being so resistant, for not giving him a chance from the beginning. Gabriel, who had been tense when Raphael arrived, relaxed. He extended his hand, and Raphael shook it. It wasn't an instant friendship, but it was a real beginning. Helena watched the scene with tears in her eyes, realizing that one of the last great barriers was finally falling. Gabriel's flower shop expanded. He hired 2 employees, which allowed for more flexible hours. He used this extra time to be more present at home, especially on days when Helena wasn't feeling well. They also started traveling, short trips to nearby towns, exploring places Helena had always wanted to visit but had never been. They went to the mountains, to the beach, to small historical villages. In each place they faced the same curious stares, but they began to develop armor against it, or perhaps not armor, but a genuine indifference. What people thought simply stopped mattering so much. One day at the farm, while working in the garden, Gabriel casually mentioned that he was thinking about going back to school. He wanted to take a technical course in landscaping, expand his knowledge, perhaps diversify the services of the flower shop. Helena enthusiastically encouraged him, offering to help with costs, time, whatever was needed. He enrolled and discovered that he loved being a student again, that there was a pleasure in learning that he hadn't experienced since adolescence. The classroom brought new challenges. Gabriel was one of the oldest in the class. Most were young people fresh out of high school. When he mentioned his wife, some classmates assumed she was his age. When they eventually met Helena at a school event, the revelation had the usual effect. But there were also those who simply didn't care, who saw Gabriel for the dedicated student he was, the talented entrepreneur, not for the woman he had chosen to love. He befriended a classmate, Beatrice, who was 22, and dreamed of having her own gardening business. They became study partners, and Helena met the girl when Gabriel invited her to dinner. Beatrice was refreshingly unfiltered, asking direct questions about their relationship, and Helena appreciated the honesty. The girl said she thought it was incredible that Gabriel had found someone who supported him so much in his dreams, that many people her age were in relationships where there wasn't that kind of partnership. Her perspective, without the weight of prejudice, was comforting. During their 4th year of marriage, Helena had a relapse of arthritis. The medication needed to be adjusted, and there was a period of weeks where she could barely hold a paintbrush. It was one of the darkest moments since the diagnosis. She felt useless, frustrated, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate. Gabriel took a few days off from the flower shop to stay home with her. He didn't try to cheer her up with false optimism. He was simply present. He read to her, played music, sat beside her while she rested. Slowly, with the new treatment, she began to improve. Marina was a fundamental support during this period. She came every day, helped with household chores, and kept her mother company. One afternoon, while Gabriel was at the flower shop, Marina told Helena that she had misjudged Gabriel from the beginning, that now she saw that he truly loved his mother, that he was there not out of obligation but out of genuine choice. She said she hoped one day to find someone who would love her with the same intensity that Gabriel loved Helena. Life went on, as it always does. There were no grand revelations or defining moments that changed everything, just days that turned into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years. Helena and Gabriel learned that love isn't about proving anything to anyone, but about waking up every day and choosing to be present for each other. The flower shop thrived. The garden on the property grew in beauty with each season, and Helena's paintings continued to evolve, each canvas telling a different story about life, love, and time. They stopped counting the years of difference between them, because that number had never truly mattered. What mattered were the shared mornings, the late-night conversations, the support during difficult times, and the celebration of good times. People continued to look, some with disapproval, others with curiosity, and a few with something that seemed like admiration. But Helena and Gabriel had learned to inhabit their own world, where the rules were written by themselves. It wasn't a fairy tale love, because fairy tales don't include arthritis, bills to pay, arguments over small things, and the weariness of everyday life. It was something better than that. It was a real, imperfect love, built on daily choices of care and commitment. On an ordinary afternoon, sitting on the apartment terrace, Helena painting and Gabriel reading, he looked up from his book and simply looked at her. She felt his gaze and smiled without taking her eyes off the canvas. They didn't need to say anything. After everything they had faced together, after all the trials and challenges, they simply existed side by side, and that was enough. Their love no longer needed to be defended or explained. It simply was, and perhaps that was the greatest victory of all, not having conquered the world or changed people's minds, but having found peace in simply loving and being loved, no matter what anyone else thought. Helena returned her attention to the painting. Gabriel returned to his book. The sun was beginning to set, tinging the sky orange and pink, and life went on, silent and profoundly beautiful in its simplicity.